Hey everybody, Fabrizio Cross here. Today we're going to talk about how to easily remove your side panels for access to the interior of your Electrom, and as well we're also going to talk about how to tension your steer cable, which is why I'm going into the bike today to show you this. So the tool we'll be using today is our T20 Torx driver to remove our Torx bolts. And one of the reasons we're using Torx bolts on the side panels of the Electrom is these are a little higher security than your average Allen key and such, and that somebody has to have a T20 driver to remove them. And inside of here we have all of the electronics as well as the batteries for the Electrom, which are one of the most expensive parts of the bike. And so we figured, why not keep those things a little bit more secure? So there are a number of Torx bolts that hold the side panel on, and they're mostly short bolts, but what I want to bring to your attention is two of them are slightly longer. This is a medium length bolt and this one is a longer length bolt because the panel has a bit of a bulge here and projects out. So keep track of those ones. What I like to do is take the seat cover off and I drop my bolts and such into the seat pan because that way I won't lose track of them. So first of all, I'll undo these bolts, and one thing to bring to your attention, you can absolutely do this with a cordless screwdriver with a T20 driver in it, but you want to be really careful when you're putting the bolts back in that you don't over tighten and strip the threads in the aluminum that the bolts go into. And that's why I like to use a hand-powered driver for this, because that way I'm less likely to strip those bolts. So first I'll undo the bolts. This is that long one. Okay, that's got all of the bolts out. Now, here's the tricky part. There's a bit of a trick to getting the side panel off. And so I'm going to raise my stand. I'm going to remove the center panel cover. You notice that I have the bike up on a stand, but it's right on the edge of the stand. This is so that I can drop this panel down and not bump into the stand. If you were doing this on the ground, you wouldn't have to worry about that because there would be no stand to get in your way. To do this, to take the side panel off, we want our pedals rotated so that our crank arm is facing back and up at about a 2 o'clock position on the clock. We'll pull the side panel away, and there is a cut in the side panel that allows us to maneuver it around the control cable and the handlebar. So that's gotten it out of there. Now we have to clear the crank arm. And so in clearing the crank arm, I'll pull this out and up, and then we move it up to clear the pedal, and off comes the panel. So that is the easiest way to remove your side panel. To put it back on, we just do the opposite. Okay, so we've completed the various repairs we were doing inside of the bike, and it's time to put our side panel back on. And it's basically the opposite of how we took it off, but let's go through it anyway. We have our T20 driver, and here's our side panel. And to put the side panel back on, put our cranks back at that about 2 o'clock position. And first, we want to slip the side panel over the crank and push it down and into position. Now that we have the panel over the crank, we can then slip it over our handlebar and up into position. When it comes to putting the bolts on, I like to start with the long bolt first. The long bolt is going up in the front end of the bike. And we line that up. And I won't tighten this all the way down because I want a bit of wiggle room to align my other bolts. Now my medium length bolt, which is going in front of the handlebars. And those are my two special bolts. And now I can just reapply all of my other bolts. And that's it. I'll finish up by putting in all of my other bolts, and then the side panel will be on. Thanks for watching. Let's talk about how to adjust the steering cable on your Electrom. Now, this isn't something you have to do very often, but every once in a while you may bump your front wheel into something hard enough that you change the steering angle of the bike a little bit and you have to reset it. And one of the other reasons to adjust this cable is we have found that during shipping, sometimes the vibration of being in a shipping truck, I guess, is different than the vibration of being on the road. And we have found a couple of our bikes have showed up with the owners, and this turnbuckle that adjusts your steering cable tension has come loose. And so I'd like to bring that to your attention so you can tighten it back up. This is the Electrom steering cable system turnbuckle. And you can see there's a lot going on in here. This is our generator for our generator drive. This is a contactor, which we're no longer using on the new bikes. And this in here is your DC voltage changer, which basically adjusts from 72 volt to 12 volt in order to do the 12 volt system. And then this wiring harness in here is the generator system going into the 12 volt battery, as well as the shunt that allows us to measure the current. But what we want to talk about today is our steering turnbuckle, which can sometimes come loose. Okay, to make our turnbuckle adjustment, we'll need two things. We'll need a 10mm wrench, and ideally what I like to use is a small drill bit, because what we need is a small diameter stiff piece of metal that we can insert into the turnbuckle that will allow us to tighten or loosen it. These jam nuts and the turnbuckle, in order to tighten while turning in one direction, one of these is an opposing thread. And in this case, it's this one up here. So to make adjustments, we have to first back off the jam nuts. And so I'm going to hold the turnbuckle in place and back that jam nut off. And this jam nut will turn in the same direction to back off because of that opposing thread. Now, I can now tighten up my turnbuckle, and this is done by turning it towards me. And one of the things about making this adjustment is the cable wants to spin as well, and so we need to hold each of our eyelets in place as we make these adjustments. So turning towards is tightening, turning away is loosening. And now I've tightened this back up and I'm happy with my situation, and I will bring these jam nuts back down into place. And then while holding the adjustment barrel in place, I will tighten the jam nut up against the turnbuckle barrel. That's one. And that's two. So our turnbuckle is nice and tight, and our jam nuts are up against the barrel adjust so that it will not move. One other adjustment on the steering system that I want to bring to your attention is underneath the fork crown, we have a pulley, which is part of the cable steering system. Every once in a while, because this pulley is an insert up into the fork and it's held in place by what we call a wedge nut, it can sometimes get knocked loose if you really smack into a curb really hard or have some other kind of encounter with a non-moving object in your front wheel. As well, after tightening the turnbuckle, sometimes you will change the relationship between the handlebars and the front wheel, and you will need to adjust that so that you will be back in alignment. So I'm just going to move the camera in a little closer so you can see what we're talking about here. This is our steering pulley that fastens in under the underside of the fork, and this is our 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter bolt that we need to tighten in order to tighten this pulley into the fork. As well, if we need to make an adjustment, we would loosen this bolt off slightly and turn the pulley in relation to the fork until our handlebars are straight when the fork is running straight ahead, and that is how we make adjustments, micro adjustments to the steering. And so for today, I'm not going to make any adjustments to the steering, but what I am going to do is just retighten this bolt a little bit. A socket wrench would probably be an easier way to do this, but I'm using a 13 mil wrench, and I'm just going to tighten my bolt. There we go. Just tightening up a little bit to make sure it's tight. And this is something you might want to do again after shipping, just to make sure that your steering system is tight.